don't talk enough about how passport bros are just predators. You're leaving America to go to another country to prey on the women there who you perceive as being more submissive. That's predatory behavior.
Okay, so I'm going to be just very quickly reacting to Essence's video that was made. So just so you understand a little background, 612 followers, following 1,134 people, 3,884 likes. My own TikTok is much, much lower than that because I basically just put up like 2 videos and I'm not on here, making a fool of myself. I would just like to point out, just for future reference, it says OH, so I'm assuming that's Ohio, 24 mother. She forgot the comma there. It says mother, but the interesting thing to me is it doesn't say wife. It says mother, but doesn't say wife. As I've taught you before, the first thing I'm looking for is that wedding ring. Okay, so let's just watch this new video that came up about.
So there's a woman that's from like the 80s, 90s generation, and she reacted to my video regarding normal guys that are nice today and a bad boy tomorrow, like a player tomorrow. They're wannabe player, average Joe Schmo guys, okay, and how they act and the psychology behind that. So she talked about age and how some of these guys who wasted their time, their youth, playing around with women and their emotions and not being serious about settling down, how when they get past 35, when they hit 40, maybe even 50, that's when all of a sudden they're having like this midlife crisis where they don't have kids and they don't feel like they have a legacy. They're not proud of themselves. And now they're eager to breed. I've met guys like...
Okay, so what this is basically ultimately coming down to is age gap relationships. So here's the ultimate thing about that. First of all, as much as I talk about the Strags and how I talk about them and how they obviously are showing themselves they don't appreciate the men, and a lot of them are breaking up families and they're ruining basically America's fabric, which is based on the families. The reality is that when I take it a step further, I don't actually fully blame the women. The reality is, as much as I love capitalism and as much as I like the freedoms that capitalism offers, the reality is I totally understand that the majority of the problems that this country, America specifically, I'm not really talking about Europe. However, what I'm saying could apply to Europe as well. What I'm saying is capitalism, our shifting of our industrial base to Asia has ultimately caused the downfall of this country. You may remember the movie Bulworth. Some of you may have seen it, some of you probably didn't. But the reality is that when we took jobs out of this country and we took factories out of this country and we shifted them over to Asia in order to chase profit by basically having scores and scores of Chinese, Indonesian, Vietnamese, Thai, and all of these young factory workers. And by the way, they outnumber us in America because America right now even only has 331 million people. Asia has over 2 billion people. You have China, for one, which has 1.4 or 1.5. You have India has 1.4 or 1.5. And then you have Southeast Asia, and there's like 1 billion people there. So basically, you're talking about damn near 3 billion people if you count all of Southeast Asia and you count all of Asia. But you're actually easily talking about over 3 billion people right there. I actually think the number is more like 4 billion because Africa has a little over 1 billion. South America has a little over 1 billion. And America only has 331 million. California has less people in it than the state of California. So most of North America is actually empty. It's really South America, America, USA, and then Africa and then Asia that have the majority of all the people. As you know, there's basically nobody in Antarctica. Why am I saying this? We shifted our jobs over to those countries. That started a domino effect. You see, when we had factory jobs here, think about the things that we did have. Think about Detroit. Think about Flint, Michigan. When we had factories here, we had people working. When we had people working, it was mostly the men who were going back and forth to these factories. They were doing dangerous, difficult, dirty jobs. And they had wives, and the wives were at home. The wives did not have to work because the men were only competing with the work of other men. They were not competing with other women. So when women did enter the workforce en masse, factories were replaced by outsourced work. You also had robots, computers taking over many of the jobs that normally would have went to male workers. What that did was it set us up on a course for where we are right now. That's the reality. Now, I didn't even deviate, really. This is all based on the fact that age gap relationships are coming from the fact that, guess what, dear? Men your own age have nothing to offer you except sex and pregnancy. They have nothing to offer you because they don't have careers yet. So this girl complains that men her own age are more attractive. But here's the problem. The reason why a lot of these females end up as single moms is because they're chasing men their own age who are not mature, who have no careers. Meanwhile, the older men, the men who are in their 30s, those men have a career. Those men have stability to offer a family. What's funny is women in Thailand, women in Philippines, a lot of Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, even China, South Korea, Japan, those women understand the age gap relationship. They understand the reason why it's necessary, and those women plan accordingly. Those Filipinas love, and let me just say this from the perspective of a black male who's lived in the Philippines, and I've lived in China. I've toured South Korea. I've toured Japan. I haven't really lived in those countries for very long periods of time. But let me explain it like this. If you're a black male, first of all, those women love black men. A lot of what they see about black men comes from the media, and they have their own prejudices and preconceived notions about black men. But in general, if you're a black male, if you're like one of these otakus, or you're one of these Japanese lovers of anime and this, that, and other, you go to Japan, it might take you less than a week to meet a Japanese girlfriend who might end up becoming a Japanese wife. If you go to the Philippines, it might take you 3 or 4 days before you meet a Filipino who's interested in marrying you. If you go to China, especially if you're studying Chinese, you're studying in their schools, it might take you 2 or 3 days before you meet a Chinese female who's interested in marriage. See, the reality is they understand that, especially foreign men, not just because of your passport, but also because you're exotic to them. See, in their country, what do they have? They have everybody there is just like them. But when you're over there and you're a passport bro, or let's say you go to Brazil or you go to Colombia. In Brazil right now, most of the dark-skinned black Brazilian women, I could bring up the article, I'll bring it up. They are having troubles being married. The men down there don't want them. And it's sad because when you listen to them talk, a lot of them sound and mimic this, what you hear coming from black women here on these stupid TikTok videos. So when these black men here in America, these passport bros here, are going down to Brazil and they're meeting these, especially if they like these Afro-Latinas, those Afro-Latinas are ready for you to put a ring on their finger, and they're ready for you to stay with them for the rest of their life. Those women are ready to cook for you. They're ready to clean your house. They are ready to be your wife. They are ready to have your kids. And I'll show you the article. Most of these women are not being pursued by their own men. I always think it's so funny when these women on these stupid-ass TikTok videos, when they come and they say that, oh, yeah, well, when you go to these women's countries, their men are going to chase you out. Their men are going to chop you up with machetes. It's like, y'all are so, first of all, you don't travel anywhere. The only places these women travel is like Caribbean countries and Africa, and they go there for sex tourism, but they come back alone because the men there are not interested in being married to them for the most part. And those men, all they got to do is sit still, and these cruise ships are coming with more and more women every single year. Why would they settle down with any of you when these cruise ships keep on coming? See, the women in these foreign countries understand their biological clock. They understand that they don't have a lot of time. They understand that they need a man who has a set career, a man who has set goals, and in this case, the goal is marriage. Those women understand it. The women here, just like this one, mentioning, oh yeah, well, I just interested, I'm attracted to the guys my own age. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that, but guess what? The guys your own age have nothing to offer you except pregnancy because they don't have a career. That's the reason why these chicks fall all over these damn rappers and these gangster rappers whose lifespans are cut short by assassins' bullets. And that's why Young Dolph and Nipsey Hussle and all this, they get shot up in their cars by other dudes their age. These young dudes are flashing all that money, all these fake ass gold chains, all this rented jewelry, all these rented cars. And they got they got horrible credit, by the way. And y'all are attracted to that. And guess what? These dudes have no longevity at all because chances are the only way they made that money was by making lots of enemies. It's the slightly older men, the guys in their 30s. Those guys got the careers. Those guys have the pension set up. Those guys have Social Security they're paying into. These women just don't get it here. That's the reason why these Filipinas and these Thai women, that's the reason why these Vietnamese, these Cambodian women, those women don't even have to try. These Brazilian women, these Colombian women, these Puerto Rican women, these Dominican women, these women don't even have to try to attract a black male. And the reality is, whether it's black male or white male, once these men have enough money to be able to travel, because the economics of travel means that not only is it about money, but you also have to have enough time to travel. And if you have enough time to travel, that must mean that you're set in your career. If you're set in your career and you've got vacation time and you're finding it necessary to travel to look for wives, you not only have the money, but you have the time, you have the career, and you have the inclination to actually travel for marriage. And just like in the last video, where I believe it was Danica Marie, she said, yeah, ladies, there ain't nobody from other countries coming here for you. In fact, most of those men can't come here for you because they can't afford it. Second of all, a tourist visa to come into America ain't easy to get. It's very difficult to get a tourist visa to America. The only way you see some of these men being able to get here is by the K-1 visa, which means that they must be a fiance of a woman who's already here. And that's what you see on 90 Day Fiancé. These men ain't coming here looking for you. Furthermore, there's no reason for them to come here looking for you because they got their own women in their own countries, and their own women are, for the most part, in most of those countries, their own women are marriage material, or at least they can find enough women in their group to be marriage material. They are not coming here looking for you. Yes, it is a shame that passport bros from America have to go to these other countries looking for women. These men, reality, they don't want to have to go to these other countries. But because they see that the juice here is not worth the squeeze, because they see that marriage here is not worth the risk to their assets, where a woman could literally threaten to take half your shit and walk out the door. There were two stories recently in the news. One with a dude who decided that he was going to try to wipe out his family, drive off a cliff in a Tesla. That Tesla fell 250 feet. By all means and by all physics, that Tesla should have burst into flames and exploded. It must have been God that says, no, you're not going to get away with that. And that Tesla and all four people in it survived. The shell was damaged, but the car itself did not explode and burst into flames. As a Tesla, that car should have burst into flames simply by sitting there, but it didn't. Then there was another guy, I believe it was Utah, and I posted in my community chat, this guy wiped out his entire family because his wife threatened to leave him with divorce. And he decided to wipe out the whole family. The reality is, it's a shame that these men are reaching the point where and I've said this numerous times, they're feeling guilt and they're feeling anomie. Guilt, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had defined stages of guilt as first of all, it's like shock, and then anger, and then denial, and then bargaining, and then finally they end up in the acceptance phase where they just accept it and move on. A lot of these people never make it past the anger phase. That's the reality. So the thing about it is these men here where you see the divorce rates going up, and I'm happy to say I'm not one of them because I didn't get married specifically because of the fear of divorce. But these men out there, at a certain point when you're given those vows in marriage, they say, yes, for rich or for poor, for better or for worse, till death do us part. A lot of these guys take that till death do us part, they take that seriously. And that's the reality. And you understand what I'm saying. I'm just not going to say too much of it so I don't get censored in any way. They take that shit seriously. So understand something. You can't play games with a lot of these dudes out here. And I see it as a slightly older man looking down. I see it. You play games with these dudes, you're going to end up on the news. So let's continue with the video because I have completely diverted, but I think I got my point across.
Like that were eager to knock me up. They were just like, please have my baby. Like,
I guess you're talking about the guy who you actually did have this baby, and that person was eager to knock you up, and you actually complied with that, and therefore now you're a single mom. Oops.
How soon can I get you? Bruh. Like, let me tell you, this is why a lot of guys in that generation are going overseas to the...
What's funny is I do not actually disagree with her. As I've already stated, these men want families. They want families. They want marriage. They want consistency. They want reliability. Yes, that is why they're going overseas. And I actually, what's funny is I don't disagree with what she's saying because I know it's true. By every measure, it's true. The question that these women should have been asking themselves is, why is it necessary for such a large percent of our viable, working, upwardly mobile population to say, yeah, I'm leaving, I'm going overseas? Meanwhile, what's funny to me is the Pookies and the Ray Rays who criticize the passport bros, those are the ones staying behind, and they're tricking on the single moms. They're tricking on the single moms because they're so either broke or they're so lazy, they're not interested in traveling. They're interested in sticking right here and maintaining the status quo. They're angry at passport bros because when they see us leaving and taking our resources and our empowerment and we're going overseas, their sisters, their mothers, their baby mamas, their cousins, their female cousins, as far as these haters are concerned, we're supposed to be keeping our resources here. We're not supposed to be taking our resources out. And I'm going to throw some names out. Dr. Umar ain't happy about passport bros. I could care less what Dr. Umar thinks. These pro-black manosphere dudes, I could care less what they think. They come on my channel all the time. They come on my community chat typing these stupid-ass comments. Oh, yeah, well, Deuteronomy says that you're not supposed to date outside the... I'm like, excuse me? Deuteronomy doesn't apply to black African Americans. Deuteronomy says nothing about... Like, what are you talking about? You guys are dumb. Anyway, let me stop diverting. Let me get back to the video.
Philippines and other third world countries to find a wife because the women in their own culture or their own country are not interested. And there's other factors, but sometimes it's literally because they're just not desirable to the women. And
okay, so if you're, and she was mostly focusing on age. If women who are 24 are not interested in men who may be 34 or 44, right? Well, listen, nobody says you have to be. Just understand that when you're 24 and you're going for the guy who's 25 or 26, chances are he has nothing to offer you. If this country hadn't given away its factory jobs, men of all ages would be working, and men of all ages would be breadwinners, all of them. The problem that we have is there's such a large percent of our workforce that has intermittent work, disturbed work, where it's possible you could get laid off. Just look at what's happening with Twitter. Look at what's happening with Amazon, Facebook, a lot of these tech companies. These tech companies are laying people off left and right. I will say this, they're probably keeping around the IT guys, and they're keeping around their key, in the case of Amazon, they're keeping around key delivery services. But a whole lot of these people just got laid off for Christmas 2022. So the reality is, it's like, had we had that factory labor, think about what we had when we had factory labor. We had factory labor, we had unions, we had strong political centers. Think about that. Think about that. Where you find unions, you find strong political centers. You know where you find unions right now? And I'm looking at New York City. You know where you find unions? Fire department, the police. Now, the fire department and the police are mostly right-wing conservative groups with majority white males. Ask the white males, and I want you to do this. Tell them a black man sent you. I want you to ask any white male who lives in New York City. Ask them where they live. The majority of white males in New York City don't live in New York City. They live out in the suburbs of Long Island, or they live in New Jersey, or they live in Connecticut, and they commute into the city every morning, and they commute back out of it with the money that they've made. These are white male conservatives. The majority of them are white male conservatives. Now, the next group down is white female liberals. White female liberals spreading liberalism and feminism. Those are the ones who you constantly see advocating for pro-choice. Those are the ones you constantly see advocating for raising the pay of women. Meanwhile, most of these women do not work difficult, dangerous, and dirty jobs at the same rate that men do. Most of these women were in these offices before they started getting laid off. If you look at the unions, the main unions inside New York City, you got the police, you got the firemen, the PBA, and the fire department's union, right? On the opposite side, the larger union is it's the leftist liberal feminism in the UFT, which is mostly teachers. That's a teacher union. And then there's obviously the connected unions like the CSA, which is administration and supervisors. They control education. Why do you think it's so easy for them to push in these what is it, the transvestite, transsexual males in there reading nursery rhymes to children? Why do you think it's so easy for that stuff to get pushed in? If the unions were headed by white males or even black males, believe me, you wouldn't even be hearing about this stuff. It's women, it's liberal, feminist women in those unions. My point is, where you find unions, you find political power. That is the reason why there are so many anti-union groups, because they don't want you having that political power. But what they do is they replace it with lobbyists. And these lobbyists lobby to send the jobs overseas because those lobbyists are secure in their positions. But what they don't want is they don't want to have the opposition strong enough to be able to tell them what's what. They don't want that. So this country was stupid enough to allow our factory work to be put overseas in Asia, China, India. Because that's the thing. Right now, you see, I was thinking to myself this morning, I was watching a video about space travel where we actually have space travel. Like there was a satellite that crashed into the water and they were retrieving it. I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? It wasn't even but like 4 or 5 years ago, America, China, and Russia were working together and we had space unity and we were using each other's rockets. We were ferrying each other back and forth to the space station. All of a sudden, all that shit fell apart. In the blink of an eye, all that shit fell apart. America right now is divesting from China and taking jobs from China to put into India, which is why I was telling you should be looking at companies that are moving to India and investing in their stock. India, the majority of that place is poor. China, the majority of China was poor, but China lifted over 500 million people out of poverty by using our factory work. How do you think they got the money? Building these fucking televisions for 50 inches for $700. That's where they got the money. Making your furniture and shit. Bottom line, they lifted 500 million people out of poverty. I feel like I'm Gordon Gekko at Teldar Papers having to yell at fucking people because they're stupid and they don't listen. But because there's always somebody who's going to come to my chat to argue with me. Bottom line is, we're going to move most of those factories to India. And we're going to do the exact same thing in India that we did in China. Here's the thing, though. What about the 331 million Americans that need jobs? What about them? We don't practice protectionism like those other countries do. So what about the bottom line is, we took our factories, we sent them overseas. Our men are suffering from it. And this is where I actually agree with these feminists. Yes, the men here are suffering. Now, fortunately, I'm not one of them because I saw the writing on the wall and I put myself into an industry where I don't have to worry about anything and I manage myself and nobody can tell me shit. I write the paychecks here. So the thing about it is I was fortunate enough where I could put myself into an industry where I didn't have to worry about these fluctuations in the job market. Everybody ultimately does have to worry about the fluctuation in the job market. It's just that I have like less than 10 years and I'm retired. So all I have to do is survive 10 years and I'm out. The rest of y'all are screwed. Your kids are screwed. Most of you don't put your kids into science, technology, engineering, math, or medicine, your kids are screwed because all of the service sector jobs, all of the factory level jobs, they sent those to Asia. Why do you think I like going to Asia so much? Because they have stable environments. If I move to Asia and I retire in Asia, I have stability with my pension. No matter what my pension is, even if my pension was $30,000 a year, I could move to the Philippines. The average Filipino makes $10,000 a year. I could go to the Philippines, I could pay $500 a month, and I could be in a nice condo and comfortable. But see, y'all don't understand this. And this is the reason why you see so many American men, grief, enemy, a lot of them are leaving. And they're leaving you. But let's finish this. Let's keep on going.
And the younger girls are not interested either because they want to live their life, they really want to get us to desire them. Like, they want us to want that older generation, but it's like, you guys are not as attractive as the guys.
Here's my question. When you say they want you to desire the older generation, who are you talking about when you say they? I've never actually heard anybody. In fact, I've heard exactly the exact opposite. You're taught that the older men, and you're saying it in these stupid ass TikTok videos, y'all are taught that older men who are going overseas and marrying younger women, y'all are taught that they're predators. Y'all are taught that they're evil. And y'all are taught that what do y'all call these? They're predators. What else did you say? They're traffickers and all this shit. All of these stupid ass words that you paid $40,000 a semester to learn in that useless liberal arts degree college that you went to. Y'all are attacking the men. Why wouldn't the men say, you know what, to hell with this, we're leaving? Yeah, nobody I know has been telling you to desire older males. In fact, it's been just the opposite. They've been telling you to fear older males. But, hey, listen, let me finish the video. Let me keep going.
That are closer to our age. And this is a natural desire to be mutually attracted to somebody. Like, women in the Philippines, for them, size doesn't matter and looks. They throw the looks in the box too. They say as long.
Okay, first of all, the average woman in the Philippines is about 5 feet tall. That's number one. Number two, Filipinas tend to be dark-skinned. The only Filipinas that you see that are light-skinned are the ones that they put on television and the media in order to basically perpetuate white supremacy. Here's the problem. The average Filipina doesn't fit into that white supremacy because she's got dark brown skin because she's been outside on a farm all day long. That also applies a lot to Thai women. There's a lot of light-skinned Thai women, but their skin gradually gets darker and darker. Looks do matter to these women. I think that is so ridiculous for you to say looks don't matter to these women. Yeah, looks do matter to these women. They want handsome men. Here's the thing, though. For an American men, especially if you're like taller than, I'll say, 5'10". Now, keep in mind, I'm 6'6". So basically, when I go to these countries, I tower over these people. The thing about it is, They're interested in tall men. They're interested in dark-skinned men because look at what they've been around all their life. All they've been used to is these pale-skinned, either yellow or pale white-skinned Asian people or Asian men. They're interested in tall American men. Let me also tell you a secret. Pornhub published information. They were talking about most of these countries, especially the Philippines. They consumed a tremendous amount of pornography. When these girls are getting these cell phones, what do you think they're doing with them? They're watching porn. That's the reality. So guess what? When they see American men in general, they come up with all of these preconceived notions, sexual in nature, about American men. And a lot of them are anxious to marry American men. I'm not blaming them for that because, pornography drives a lot of sexual desire, but that's just what it is. I mean, the study is there. Like, I like putting the stats and figures and studies and numbers so this way nobody can argue with me. It's like, don't argue with me. Send your fucking comments over to Cambridge or something. Don't argue with me. But the bottom line is that's just what the reality is. They care about looks. They care about men being tall. They care about men if they have dark skin or white skin. A lot of these Filipinas, a lot of these Thai women, they're tired of these white guys. Because most of these white guys go in there, these guys are like, 30, 40, beer bellies because they drink a lot of alcohol. They'll get with them, but nah, they're tired of that. You know what they're looking for? They're looking for brothers. Most brothers who are traveling right now, look at the channel Zoom to Thailand. Look at these channels. Look at these passport brothers who are right now in those countries. Man, I can't make this stuff up.
As long as you paying the bills, I'm gonna cook, clean, and do everything for you and take care of you. I'll have your kids, and when you die, I'm gonna marry the next man. Like, they are about it, okay? They're purposely going for the European guys.
That was mostly true up until recent. Believe me, these Asian women, specifically Filipina, specifically Thai, specifically Chinese, specifically South Korean, and specifically Japanese. These women, they're interested in white men, but they're interested in brothers too. As a 6'6" tall black, I'm dark skinned black male. I can attest to. I got receipts to show that these women are interested in black men. If I can go to one of those countries where you have all of these prejudices that these women don't want black men, if I can go to one of these countries and I've gone to a couple of these countries and met these women, and listen, I've got the receipts. So the reality is, it's like, what you're saying about them, I like to phrase it like this. These women play the long game. These women want marriage. These women want foreign men. They don't even care whether you're black, Hispanic, white. They don't care anymore. They will marry you. They will be your wife. They will have your children. They will stay married to you. And if your age gap isn't so tremendous that you end up dying first, maybe they will marry off again. Maybe they will. Well, first of all, that's assuming you die. But chances are you're probably going to live. But the reality is these women want black men. So don't try to pretend that they don't.
The American guys that are, of a certain caliber, a certain age range. And I've been on those sites, and I know what these dudes be looking like, and I'm just like, oh, God.
It's just white skin, but...
Yeah, you know what she's showing right now? She's showing SabuMarriage.com. They have a YouTube channel. It's called Sabu. I think it's called Sabu Women. Yeah, it's SabuWomen.com, right? And basically what SabuWomen.com is, it's a Filipino dating site that's run on YouTube. And by the way, there's videos of black men getting married on this site specifically because I've seen those videos. I've watched this site a couple of times. SabuWomen.com. There's white men who typically pay to go on a tour in Philippines. And what they do is they take them to this dinner ball and they meet a bunch of Filipino women. Some of them are single, unmarried, and childless. Some of them are single moms. Some of these white guys do not care if they're single moms. That's just the reality. Some of these white guys don't mind being cleanup bros, like this guy right here. This guy right here in this picture, these guys don't care about being a cleanup bro. In fact, if the kids are old enough, they really don't care. They're just looking for a life partner. See, the reality is most of these men, especially these white men, who are actually, building wealth, the same white men you complain about all the time who are building their wealth so much so that they continuously have, 10 or 12 times as much wealth as a black woman? Yeah, they actually want to build families. They actually want to save money. They actually want to build their wealth. They actually want to have a family and build their wealth. Y'all are fucking up. So the reality is these guys are always going to be above you because you can't build anything because your own men don't want you and they're leaving and going to the Philippines and Thailand and Cambodia and Laos. And then they're going to take back the White House. Yeah! I can't help it. I'm sorry. I had to do that.
It doesn't matter if they have black or what kind of skin they have.
That's SabuWomen.com.
And these women are competing with European and American women to be more desirable to these men. And I'm just like, you can have them, honey. Go heck.
Yeah, I know. Y'all understand that you have no control over the passport bros. You have no control over their sexual, cultural, or financial aspects. You have no control over it. So it's easy for you to say, oh, y'all can just take them, y'all can have them. You'll be saying that right up until you see your entire neighborhood dry up and die. Just like I keep bringing up, and I always publish the articles, I publish the links in the URL section. The mere fact that sperm donors, 2%, less than 2% are black males, all y'all got to choose from now is Pookie and Ray Ray. Dr. Johnson, Dr. Dexter, they ain't giving you nothing. They ain't giving you no money. They ain't giving you no DNA. So what will you have left? Especially if you go the rainbow flag route. What will you have left? And you know what's so funny? I had to argue with black women about, what was it? Gentrification. Oh my goodness, they're taking over our neighborhoods. It looks like we're being invaded by aliens. They're taking over our neighborhoods. And then I'm thinking to myself about gentrification. I'm like, well, gentrification doesn't hurt me because I own my properties. And then I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I like gentrification. I used to hate driving through Brooklyn. I hate driving through the Bronx. You know what gentrification does? Gentrification means that when I drive through the Brooklyn or the Bronx, or if I drive into parts of Queens, it means that there's no Pookies and no Ray Rays and no Hectors and no Ozees left to steal the rims off of my car. That's what it means. That's what it means. So I'm thinking about gentrification. I'm like, what's the point of perpetuating a ghetto? That's what it really came down to for me. And I know a lot of these pro-blacks and Dr. Umars and Lizzos are going to be upset with me. But I think to myself, like, wait a minute. Why are we perpetuating a ghetto? Shouldn't we be making this better? But they don't want that. And that's why they hate passport bros. When you take your DNA and you take your money and you take your property or your wealth and you take it and you leave, they've got nothing. They got nothing but the welfare checks being sent to them by the U.S. government. That's why they hate passport bros. That's why they hate the passport bros. When your neighborhood dries up and dies, that's when you'll understand, oh, they could just take them. They could just take them. That's when you'll understand. When your neighborhood, read my lips. You know what Bush said, Bush Sr.? Read my lips. When your neighborhood dries up and dies, that's when you'll understand. When there's nothing left, that's when you'll understand. And I know a lot of y'all, oh yeah, well, I'm going to get me a Zaddy. I'm going to get me a Brad. Please do that. Because when you get Zaddy and you get Brad and you get Jethro, all you're doing is helping to speed up the gentrification process. It's a beautiful thing. Do you know how much I enjoy now? I can drive to Brooklyn. I can drive to the Bronx. I hated those places. I really did. Harlem, too. You remember how many shootings we had in the 80s? We had shootings left and right, 90s. It used to be a goddamn shooting gallery here. Look at Chicago. Look at what are those places? All those places around New York or America that you can think of where they got all this violence and gang crime and shit. Chirac. You know what, Chirac? Let me tell you something. If I went to Chirac, you know how I'd solve their problem? I'd bring in a bunch of foreign women, and I'd bring in a bunch of white women, bring in a bunch of white men. We gentrify the whole goddamn place. You know what we're talking about here? I'm talking about Darwinism. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Darwinism, natural selection. Y'all ain't ready for this conversation. I ain't like gentrification. I can park my car in the Bronx right now, and you can't steal the rims off it because this is the Pookies and the Ray Rays. We pushed them out of the state. We sent the Pookies and the Ray Rays to Chirac. Pookie and Ray Ray couldn't afford to stay here. So if there's no this is simple logic. If there's no Pookies and no Ray Rays, then that means that I don't have to worry about somebody snatching the rims off my Mercedes. Makes sense, doesn't it? If there's no Keishas and no Shaniquas, then that means that there's nobody to birth Pookies and Ray Rays. It's fucking brilliant. All right, let me continue.
Go ahead and have him. Like, that's what you want to hop on?
Yes.
That's what time we on?
Yes.
Whatever rows your boat, okay?
Yes.
I think it's interesting, too, that they are purposely choosing a certain group of men because they could date men and marry men from their own culture.
No, that's where you're wrong. They can't simply date and marry men from their own culture. Let me explain the finances of this situation. I brought this up before because Mike Philippine Journey, he had published, or he had put out in one of his videos, an explanation of finances. And I'm going to try to put it into this video, but I'm just going to explain it like this. The average, let's think about the Philippines specifically. I could apply this also to possibly Brazil and Colombia, but let's just think about the Philippines, because this way I won't have to change the numbers. The average Filipino makes less than $10,000 a year. When I use that number has been rounded up because the average Filipino actually makes less than $7,000 a year. So you're talking about over 60 million people, even if you want to say that more than half of them are women. The majority of those men don't make much money. Do you know how much a Filipino wedding costs? If you had a nice, everything, balls to the wall Filipino wedding, especially if you were in my condo and you used their wedding center and you had a beautiful wedding, you know how much that wedding would cost? That wedding would cost you less than $3,000. If you did everything 100%, you had a beautiful, super amazing, beautiful wedding, less than $5,000. The average Filipino makes less than $10,000 a year. Now, you get somebody like me who goes to the Philippines, $200,000 a year I'm bringing with me. I got $200,000 plus per year backing me, and I come to the Philippines. In fact, let's not use me. Let's use a regular black man who's in IT. In fact, most of those dudes make more money than me. But let's use a regular black man making $100,000 a year. And let's say he spends $1,000 round trip on a ticket to the Philippines. He wants to meet a wife, and he stays in the Philippines for an entire month. Let's say July or August. This dude paid $500 or $600 for his condo stay, and he might have spent about $1,000 for the round trip ticket. Unless he's like me, he flies business class, he spent about $4,000 for it. Automatically. Do you know how it feels to walk into a store and know you can buy anything in that store that you want? In fact, the hard part for me when I go to these countries is disciplining myself not to waste my money. Because when I walk into these stores, I know right away, based on that exchange rate, I can have anything in that store that I want. Do you know how that feels? To be able to walk into that store and say, you know what, anything that's on any of these shelves, I can walk out of here, I can buy it. You know how that feels? You can't so easily do that. See, the thing about Passport Bros, a lot of people, you don't put it into certain words. When a American Passport Bro, when we go to one of these countries, we are able to literally dominate their economy. We are able to dominate their real estate market. We are able to dominate their women. Men feel dominant. Instead of being in America where, men are beaten down by this feminism and this leftism and all this. You can't say what you think. Do you understand how hurtful it is to me when I watch these videos and I hear these men making their YouTube content and they have to change the words they want to use? They're afraid to use Roe versus Wade, they're afraid to use abortion. It's like, I can't do that. But these men here are so beaten down that they can't even use words. That's how fascism, that's how the Nazism started, where certain words, fascism, that's exactly how it starts, with words, where they change how you think because you can't say words. Let me tell you something. When these men go to these other countries, their fucking eyes brighten up. Oh my God, I can't believe this place is like this. I can't believe these women are like this. I can't believe things are like this. This is amazing. It's like there's nothing. Yeah, anyway.
And, continue that lineage of their culture. But they're marrying for specific reasons because they want a certain type of lifestyle. And
they're marrying because they want wives. They're marrying because they want to build wealth. They're marrying because they want to build families. Your problem is you provide none of that.
it's like, okay, that's your business. I'm just calling it out. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these older guys are going to have a harder time dealing with Western girls, who would rather have a sugar experience than dedicate themselves. So might as well do that.
A sugar experience? Is that what we're doing? So, what's funny? These same black women on TikTok, they have no smoke for all of these women getting pregnant by Nick Cannon. Or I call him Dick Cannon. But anyway, they've got no smoke for those women. But they're scratching their head. They're staring lifelessly into these cameras, to these stupid TikTok videos. Look, you remember Jaws? Look at this. These black eyes, lifeless eyes, like a doll's eyes. They're staring into these goddamn cameras, making these stupid ass videos, and basically, first of all, the body language, the eye contact, you could tell that they ain't happy about this. They keep talking about how much they don't care, and then they keep on making these goddamn TikTok videos. We know better. Gentlemen, we know better. Get your passports, man. Get your passports.
So there's a woman.
All right, so that's the end of the video. And that's basically it. So first of all, make sure you look in the URL section so you can see the links that I've published. Because when I publish these links, these are some damn good news stories that you need to be aware of. I guess the question you need to ask the average American man: when you go overseas and you're staying in your condo and you happen to meet a chick just like this, it's like, what goes through a man's mind when he meets a nice chick like this? Now, you know where you'd find this right here? Because a lot of guys be asking me, oh, where do you find this? Philippines, Indonesia, South Korea. And you meet a woman like this. Oh, by the way, Thailand. I have to say Thailand, yes. Even Laos and Cambodia. You meet a woman like this, and she is waving to you, and she's giving you the choosing signals. I guess they call it choosing signals. And she's waving to you. She's like, honey, come this way to paradise with me. You came all this way to be with me, and now I'm going to show you the love that would make you feel like such a man. And what are you going to do about that? Men, this is the reason why Passport Bros are winning. And this is the reason why Passport Bros are leaving you behind.
To be continued.